Hello, I'm William Sanchez, and this is the Philosophical Rebellion Substack. Today, I'm going to be talking about the sixth section of my book on free will and fine tuning. So, I start off with fine tuning. And today, a lot of the arguments for fine tuning assume that if a few of the parameters of the universe were slightly different, then humankind would never have come about, and therefore, the universe must be fine tuned for human life to ever have originated. So, the question of fine tuning is really the question of whether or not the universe was designed to eventually give rise to the evolution of life, or is it possible that the universe existing and humankind arising could be the product of pure coincidence? I actually want to start focusing on different aspects of the fine tuning problem. Because to me, if the universe were fine tuned for life, there would be two very reasonable outcomes from that design. The vast majority of the universe would be habitable for living things, and life would be extremely durable with natural processes posing a minimal threat to living things. But that is not at all the universe we live in. The universe that we observe is actually the exact opposite of what we would expect from fine tuning. Instead of the majority of time and space being habitable for living things, the vast majority of the universe would be inhabitable, meaning it would be so inhospitable for living things that they would die immediately. So unless the vast majority of the universe was fine-tuned to kill most living things, the fine-tuning argument wouldn't make sense. Then secondly, is life durable or fragile? Because if the universe were fine-tuned for life, you would assume that the odds of life surviving would be very high. But that is also the opposite of what we observe. And one of the best ways we could tell that the universe is not fine-tuned for human life is infant mortality. And after 2010, the infant death rate has been around 6.8 per 1,000 live births. But if you go back just 100 years, the infant death rate was 157 per 1,000 live births. Meaning that beyond 1 century ago, 15% of all babies born would end up dying before maturing. And to me, such a high level of infant death does not indicate that the universe is fine-tuned for those lives. But if you look at other forms of life, like a sea turtle or an octopus, they have way less than a 1% chance of maturing to adulthood. So the universe is not fine-tuned for their life either. Plus, if you look at natural disasters here on Earth, they end up killing tons of living things all of the time. So were natural disasters fine-tuned to kill life? Or does that life perish as a result of coincidence in an unguided universe? Then you could also think of the basic requirements needed for life to survive, like a stable atmosphere and how uncommon that is in the universe, or a steady supply of clean water and enough food to eat. And today, according to the United Nations, about 800 million humans are experiencing food scarcity. There are people alive right now today who are starving to death. So to me, that's not indicative of a fine-tuned universe. Why would the universe be fine-tuned for these people to starve to death? Why would the universe be so non-optimized for living things and hostile to the survival of living things if it were fine-tuned for life? To me, it wouldn't be, and the fine-tuning of the universe doesn't actually make sense when you compare it to the universe we observe. So, what is much more likely to explain what we observe about the universe is that it and humankind are the product of chance. Basically, the lack of optimization of the universe for living things and how inhospitable the universe is for living things makes the chance hypothesis significantly more likely. So, then my next paper is on the evolution and development of free will. And although some people argue that humans do not possess free will, each of us is presented with situations in which we are able to choose how to respond from a variety of options. The choices we make entail different consequences, which put us on a different life trajectory than if we had acted differently. Since our reality is determined by our choices and we have the freedom to make different choices, humans do possess free will. But that does not mean you have complete and total free will over all of your choices in life and your position in the universe. Instead, we have a limited form of free will, which is facilitated by our conscious experiences. Human consciousness imbues humankind with free will. And what that means is that we are responsible for our actions. So if you want to murder somebody, but then you know that murder is against the law and you will get caught, so you choose not to murder them, that is a free will decision to choose to stay out of prison. So that means your actions are shaped by your responsibility. And if knowledge of consequences is able to shape your actions, that means you made a prediction and changed your behavior based on that prediction. And that's basically where free will comes from. Free will is an evolved ability that comes from the evolved foundational trait of self-restraint. So one of the biggest threats to our individual freedom is addiction. And our society is full of people addicted to things from alcohol, food, gambling, drugs, porn, video games, and so many more. So in order to truly be free, you have to become a master of self. And the way Jean-Jacques Rousseau put that is, to be driven by our appetites alone is slavery, while to obey a law that we have imposed on ourselves is freedom. Or as Aristotle said it, I count him braver who overcomes his desires than him who conquers his enemies, for the hardest victory is the victory over self. Another way it was put by Mahatma Gandhi was, your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny. Basically, if you want to shape your destiny, you first have to start shaping your own beliefs, so that your mindset facilitates the destiny you want to achieve. Humans only possess free will, which comes about through the process of making choices and taking actions that shape our environment and future. No matter what worthwhile things you want to do with your life, it will require abiding by certain rules needed to achieve your goals. Free will is the ability to decide then achieve your own goals, which is possible through committing yourself to live by the beliefs and actions required to achieve your desired outcome. Willpower is an important trait an individual needs to foster to develop their own free will. Unfortunately, as much as free will is a personal struggle to achieve, it is also a political struggle for a society to protect and facilitate. So a tyrannical political foundation is also antithetical to the individual's ability to develop free will. A political structure which respects individual autonomy is an important prerequisite for citizens to be able to develop their own free will. And John Stuart Mill gave one of the best explanations ever of how a government must respect individual autonomy. John Stuart Mill said there are 3 fundamental aspects that a government must respect in order to preserve individual autonomy. First, the inward domain of consciousness, liberty of thoughts and feeling, absolute freedom of opinion and sentiment on all subjects. Second, the liberty of tastes and pursuits, of framing the plan of our life to suit our own character. And thirdly, the freedom to unite for any purpose that does not involve harming others. And John Stuart Mill then goes on to say that any society that does not respect all 3 aspects of individual autonomy is not a free society. So he says, the only freedom which deserves the name is that of pursuing our own good in our own way, so long as we do not attempt to deprive others of theirs or impede their efforts to obtain it. Each is the proper guardian of his own health, whether bodily or mental and spiritual. Mankind are greater gainers by suffering each other to live as seems good to themselves than by compelling each to live as seems good to the rest. So, free will is an individual struggle and a political struggle. But there's another challenge to the entire idea of free will, and that comes from physicists. So, I have a quote from Brian Greene where he was in the World Science Festival arguing against the idea of free will, saying it's actually all just the movement of particles, and everything that we feel and think is all just the movement of particles. Therefore, we do not actually possess free will. We are all just abiding by the laws of physics. So, Brian Greene went on to say, I feel like I'm making the choices and decisions of my next word and action. The sensations are real, but the fundamental freedom of will, which that sensation seems to point, that is illusory. So my view is that although we are just a collection of particles moving according to the laws of physics, that is not a complete and total description of human consciousness. There are actually many aspects of reality that lack a complete description if you're just looking at the fundamental forces and particles which make up our universe. And human consciousness is one of them. And that's because human consciousness is emergent, meaning that the whole is more than the sum of its parts. So an atom is emergent when you compare it to quarks and electrons. Molecules are emergent when you compare them to individual atoms. Something like wetness is emergent, and it depends on the state of the molecules which make up the substance. A bird flock emerges from multiple birds flying together in sync. A city emerges from a bunch of human beings living together. And all of these emergent levels of reality require new descriptions and new ways to explain them. That doesn't mean that any of these emergent features are incompatible with the very fundamental forces of nature. It just means that those fundamental forces are not a complete and total description of all aspects of reality. And that's exactly what's going on with free will. Free will is an emergent feature of living things that possess a very complex consciousness. And consciousness itself is an evolved emergent feature created by nervous systems. And life itself is an emergent feature of reality. Therefore, free will builds upon many, many other forms of emergence in nature. We live in an emergent universe. So whether or not the universe is deterministic is beside the point. The focus should be on the observable fact of nature that human actions shape reality. Human choices shape our environment and the future. Therefore, human free will exists within the boundaries of the deterministic rules of nature. Free will is a limited mental function which is not precluded by the deterministic fundamental laws of nature. And free will is the product of biological evolution. So one of the first steps in the evolution of consciousness was the ability to sense and reflexively react to a living thing's immediate environment, like how a worm will move towards food or away from something shocking it. Then with the evolution of organs like eyes and ears, life evolved perception at a distance and the ability to mentally represent itself in time and space, which gave rise to the next steps in the evolution of free will: directed attention, planned actions, and the ability to suppress innate urges. Instead of just mechanistically reacting to our external environment, life evolved the ability to decide how to react to its environment. And then, as life developed all of those traits, living things also started living in much more social communities. And with that, some species evolved the ability to empathize with other conscious creatures. And all of those put together were then combined with the ability to imagine new things and invent stuff that does not yet exist. So there was a point in human history where the bow and arrow did not exist. Cars and planes did not exist. The Great Wall of China did not exist. But through humankind thinking up those ideas, then dedicating themselves to creating something new that did not yet exist in nature, humans were able to create new facets of reality that had not yet existed and are not able to be found in the fundamental laws of nature. So there is an evolutionary foundation to free will. So, by understanding the evolutionary origin of free will and how it is possible for us to manifest free will for ourselves as individuals, we then develop the ability to shape our environment and our own political systems so that we can live in a society we truly want to create rather than one we are forced into by circumstance. And that is what is so powerful about actually acknowledging the reality that free will does exist, because it allows humankind the ability to shape our own future as a species. The universe does not care about us. It was not designed for us. We need to care about each other, and we need to design our society to facilitate human well-being and flourishing, because nature is not designed to facilitate that. So that is the fine-tuning and free will portions of my book, The Stories They Don't Want You to Know, which is available on Amazon if you want to check it out.